Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.
Welcome back to Brand Business, the official platform that looks at people, places, and opportunities under the stewardship of the Global Indian Series. Because yes, let's face it, we are everywhere. Now, the whole purpose of these conversations is to really look at the opportunities presented in different nations. Now, interestingly, this week we're going to be taking a look into Suriname, this small Dutch-speaking nation that is the smallest sovereign state in South America. Now, Suriname, like many other countries out there, has taken an aggressive drive to attract FDI, foreign direct investment, with the president hailing up a whole new regime that is promising to make not only the country better, but also the investors' experiences there. Now, we've all heard it before. Many nations have been trying to call our brand world, and I think a lot can be said for the lack of usage of the diaspora dividend. The fact is, as investors, as business owners, and stewards within economies, as people of Indian origin and the entire brand world, we find ourselves geographically spread, but also very well resourced. Even have a look now at the new CEO of the World Bank. But not more has been done to tap into that. Well, until now, obviously with our platforms. But a lot of governments are now relearning to ignite the fire of familiarity, to pave the ways in which people can provide themselves further trust and familiarity with a nation. Now, Suriname for me is a rather interesting one because it is currently at economic pain. And to help guide you through this incredible country, we are joined by Rekha Bissumbhar, who's not only the new chair for the VSB, which is the private sector organization, the largest chamber of commerce there, but she's also a key personality in Staatsolie, which is one of the national oil companies in the country. We have a very open and honest conversation about the fate of Suriname, what you and we need to know more about, what we need to do to avoid, and like every emerging country, we talk about the good, the bad, and the damn right ugly. But before then, a quick note from our dear sponsors. If you want to find out more about the Global Indian Series, by the way, well, it couldn't be easier. Simply come to the website, which is www.globalindianseries.com. There you can listen to this podcast and the entire repertoire of discussions so far.
Hi, this is Damesh Shingala, co-founder of Novus. At Novus, we believe technology leads the way for a meaningful change. We are on a mission to change the way corporations, governments, and institutions interact with information. Same as the Global Indian podcast, help people transform for a better future. Find out more on how we are inspiring global change, either at the Global Indian Series website or Novus website to learn more about our innovative software solutions. From our family to yours, I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you.
My name is Chitra Stern, and I am a proud Global Indian Ambassador and CEO of Martiniale Resorts and Martiniale Residences. We pride ourselves on the journeys that define a community, and our developments bring people together. Did you know that over 70,000 people just like us call Portugal home? The Global Indian journey has brought people together in a meaningful way, and on behalf of all of us at Martiniale, we want to thank you for joining us in these remarkable conversations. We look forward to seeing you here in Lisbon post-COVID.
Hi, my name is Divya and I'm co-founder of the Global Indian podcast. Before you get to today's show, I've got a quick favour to ask. If you've been enjoying our conversations, I'd love if you could take just 1 minute to leave us a review on the platform that you're listening to us on and share our work to friends and family. It helps us out a lot. Word of mouth is the primary way that we grow. Thanks for your continued support.
Started off, obviously, working in the industry in Suriname. You've been with Staatsolie. You've also been a member of the supervisory board. You've been with VSB. You've been now a director of Upstream. You've got this incredible experience that is all based around national prosperity building of this small little country called Suriname, where everyone speaks Dutch, English, and Hindi. So before we go into your business realm, what's it like to be you? What does it mean to be Surinamese?
So being a Surinamese is well, it is how you look at it. I was raised in a village and we were only allowed to speak Hindi, or we call it Suriname. So Dutch was not allowed at home. The national language of Suriname was not allowed at home. And that was probably also one of the things that helped us become more fluent. It did not restrict us from learning the other languages. Maybe it was a way of encouraging us to keep the culture that was inherited from India. I am also Hindu from a religious background, so very religious upbringing. Yeah, who am I? So when I was very young, I think 6 or 7, Suriname was in a very big crisis. We had a coup in 1980, and there was poverty everywhere. And of course, in the books you see there is so much potential in Suriname on natural resources, potential in forestry, potential in agriculture. And what struck me most is so many natural resources and so much poverty. So very early in life, I knew that we have to do something about it and we cannot stand on the sideline. So I picked up the education, studied geology, and then ended up in oil and gas. So I have been working for Staatsolie more than 23 years now, and a whole career path.
I was gonna say it doesn't look like you've been there for any longer than 5 years. So we won't mention how long you've been there. Obviously, working in that sector and studying geology has given you a deeper appreciation of the environmental impacts that are taking place in Suriname. Because as you said, you grew up in a village, you saw probably first-hand basis of what national resources can do for a country, but also how it can be exploited negatively as well.
Yes, so that's why good guidance is needed. So yes, I am now with Staatsolie, but when we saw that Suriname's economy kept on declining and private sector was dealing with so many challenges. Again, you cannot stand on the sideline, and if people think you can help contribute to the economic development and private sector growth, then you take that responsibility. So that's how I ended up as being chair of the FISB, which happened in November last year. So I'm just in position 2 months now. We're aligning with the public sector and the private sector, and also all the other stakeholders. So this morning we had a meeting with the ambassador of Holland, and there we try to see what we could do from private sector to private sector using embassies or ambassadors to pick up from private sector to private sector. Sometimes public sector can be stimulants, but what the private sector also sees is a lot of hurdles. The efficiency is different in the public sector.
Is that a polite way of putting it?
I'm trying to be diplomatic and not you're recording me, so
because is that a lot of pressure on your back? Because VSP has been around since the 1950s, so this is like the strongest and oldest organization there. You got over 200 members, and you're seen as being the biggest provider of social stability within the country, as well as the economic sector. You're taking over on the back of a massive crisis taking place in Suriname. You've got high inflation rates. You got a government that had to almost inherit a bankrupt system. Your debt is almost double to your GDP. Is it tough being you right now?
it is tough, but we as PSB see the light in the tunnel, and we're working towards more light in the tunnel and getting us back up. So we have to show some more resilience as Suriname, as Surinamese people, and that means sacrificing a lot of your energy and time to make sure that you make that step forward. So FISB struggles, but with the alignment that we're now having with both the public sector and the private sector, we see some progress. It's just 2 months now for us, for the new board in this organization. We believe that with a better alignment, a better understanding, some steps will be made forward. We had several meetings with the ministers of economic affairs. We had meetings with the Minister of Finance, and we see some things or some recommendations done by the private sector those are being considered and taken in their actions. We do understand that not all recommendations can or are being implemented because of other political reasons. But to solve the economic crisis in Suriname, we need to stimulate production. We need to stimulate the income of Suriname, and we cannot do it alone. So we're thinking of partnerships, joint venture partnerships, where we can share risks and share the gains. For Staatsolie, for instance, but also Deep Blue World, you see that the joint venture partnership model has worked in those sectors. It works in the oil sector, oil and gas sector. And Deep Blue World was also a local company who partnered with Deep Blue World, and now they see tremendous growth. For the agriculture sector and all the other sectors, we see partnerships with foreign direct investors from India, US, Europe, Canada as the boost that we need. So how to connect and how to make something out of it is what we have to work on, and we're trying to build some bridges. So Indian Express is one of the bridges that we can build towards India private sector.
Well, I was going to say, you've had access to lines of credit worth over 80 billion for the last 5 years. You've had a number of MOUs signed up between the government of Suriname and the government of India. I suppose the elephant in the room is, why has nothing been achieved so far? Has it been a lack of will, or is it a lack of know-how on both sides?
I think it's a difficult thing. We have to ask the public sector, we have to ask the government. But
yeah,
if you ask me, capability is an issue. Having the right people on the right place is an issue. If capability first gets attention from the government, then probably utilizing those credit lines and getting more out of it would be more valuable. So I didn't know about this 80 billion credit lines that you mentioned. I know that there were some credit lines from India, and I know that we have a debt with India. And so most of the credit lines that were given were purely related to the government. And then if the government does not increase their earning capacity through taxes or other stimulating incentives in the country, then it will not be very valuable. So the credit lines were mainly used, I think part of it were for the utility and power company of Suriname, and how it was used for the rest.
I can see that there's a difficulty there, because, and you're only 2 months in the role as well. So I have to also deeply appreciate that as well. I think when I have a look at the private sector and I have a think about India, one of the biggest challenges that many Indian readers have told us is that when they think about Suriname, one, they don't even know where it is, but secondly, it's a very small addressable market. You're looking at over 600,000 people. But then the questions come up saying, well, what are the springboard effects? How do we deal with the rest of the CARICOM region? How can we utilize Suriname not just to get into the EU via the Netherlands route or the Dutch-speaking world, but also within Latin America as well? So it is seen as a springboard there. Now, in order to assist that, it needs private sector participation from Suriname's side, companies and organizations that can handhold Indian organizations to make those leaps. But again, It's been a resounding silence from the Suriname side, because we've never heard anything from these companies. Again, is it a willingness to deal with India, or is it mainly to deal with the Dutch-speaking world?
I think there's a lot of willingness to deal with the Indian companies because of the diaspora and similarities. So probably a lot of the companies would prefer to connect with India, but there is not so much known. Who are the investors? What is their track record? What can we do together? We were a colony of Holland, so half of the population lives in Holland. So that half of the families in Holland. So that makes the link strong.
Yeah.
And then we have also people in US, and the businesses that are set up in Suriname or have been set up, the international businesses were mainly American, Canadian influences and Europe influences. So those influences and those networks establish stronger networks with business environments in those countries than the networks that we have with India. So there is no large Indian investor yet in Suriname.
So it's more of a question of familiarity, isn't it? It's using the diaspora dividend to basically be able to unlock the opportunities. Because when we looked at Suriname, and I suppose the writings on the wall, for a marketplace like that is emerging, that you haven't got the procurement policies in place just yet, a lot of things are still done by a single source procurement. These are the markets that are really good for entry points from the Indian communities across the world, because you still got that big risk factor. Whereas when you look at it from the US point of view or the UK point of view, there's never going to be a large fund group or pension fund that would want to enter into here, because it's almost still the wild, wild west. So I suppose it is a very smart move of you from going towards the diaspora and saying, here's the familiarity, this is what we can do. So looking at the way forward, what are the opportunities? Sorry, go on.
I also wanted to connect to your previous question still. So what can the private sector of India mean for Suriname, and what benefit could they have if they use Suriname as a hub and partner with Surinamese company who are now doing the regional planning, and the transport sector is looking at the intersectoral plan and regionally mapping where the different industry zones should be and where our markets should be towards Brazil, the bigger million customers. So we're looking at opening up from Suriname to Brazil and further south. We have the access to CARICOM. Well, we have our own struggles with dealing with CARICOM because of a lot of barriers that some of the CARICOM member states, such as Trinidad, put. While it should be easy trade, it's not. So CARICOM market is not a successful market yet for Suriname. So we're looking at other markets also, and taking the hurdles that we have in the CARICOM market is something that we will also focus on. For Indian private sector, if they want to put up a pharmacy company, because I heard that some of the one pharmacy or two pharmacy company want to invest in Suriname, and they had contacted the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they have plans to put up a pharmacy industry to supply to the Latin and the Latin CARICOM and the neighboring region. I don't know where it ended up, but what I also know is that if only the public sector is used to enter and do a business in Suriname, it will probably take longer, because to get your way around, partnering with the local company will help you quicker. There is a lot of bureaucracy in the government, and in the public sector. I don't want to speak bad, but this is reality. So it will take much longer, a lot of inefficiencies. While if you have partnership and you have a win-win solution there, then I think you can move and have that win-win.
The culture is different, isn't it? Because I think, quite frankly, when you have a look at a country that 60% of its employment is through the government, which is non-productive, and 40% is from the private sector, which is based upon production, you're always going to have a disparity. And I suppose now moving forward, a large number of people are looking for efficiency, especially when they go towards international markets. Now, one thing that you mentioned is about having secure partnerships. What legal structures does Suriname have that supports that?
Depends on the sector. So, for instance, for the oil and gas, there's a fixed royalty of 6.25%, and then you have tax exemptions for the mining and the oil and gas. For the agriculture sector, there are not many incentives yet in place, but as PSB, we are talking with the Ministry of Finance, and we will be talking with the Ministry of Agriculture to get some more incentives. So if the private sector or companies from India partner with Suriname, we will be able to influence the government as VSB. We can help influence to bring some things in place and take some hurdles away. The one-stop window that all the foreign direct investors are looking for to avoid the bureaucracy and all the things that take a lot of time, work permits and other. I think VSB can play a big role in it and will help the matchmaking also without any gains. It is for the private sector growth acceleration. That's the main focus of VSB. So helping private companies connect and then move at the speed that companies like Staatsolie do and DP World does.
What's your hope as the new chair for VSB? Because you're now entering conversations with the ministries, but I'm sure your predecessors would have done the same thing. It's that whole thing, common sense is everything but common. I'm sure your predecessors spoke to the government saying, we need to provide concessions. Your government have said, we want to see Bollywood come into Suriname. Well, then you need to have a film commission in place. You want to see large-scale investors come into the timber industry. Well, okay, great. What are your taxation regimes when it comes to heavy good machinery? Why hasn't that been dealt with before?
So the last term, we had COVID. So maybe COVID was kind of the reason. And the term before, the political and economical climate in Suriname is not okay. And I think you already know it's kind of dramatic for years now. So are the politicians ready to take harsh decisions or healthy decisions? Sometimes, not always. So what can the private sector do? The private sector, with working without relying too much on the public sector, you can still do a lot. Staatsolie, for instance, we are now 43 years almost. In December, we will be 43 years in operation, and we started also very small, and we're maybe very small in the world. But the successes we made was because of the partnerships that we could do with the different other companies without the involvement or too much involvement from the public sector. Yeah. So as private sector, we agreed on what would work for both. And when the win-win was established, then all the agreements were prepared, and then we went to the government, support this. And so that is how we moved the oil and gas sector, and we're still moving it.
But Staatsolie had huge investments coming in. They had real strong partnerships. Is the same thing true for all the 220 members of VSB, for example? Do they have almost critical mass to turn around to people and say, we want to partner with you? And do they have the visibility and the trust factor for people to take that seriously?
If companies have a track record and can prove it, the trust will be there. There were some investors last year here who convinced the government that they had good intentions and they wanted to supply hydrogen power, but it's a small community, and I think you know about the scandal. Trust is lost with things like this. A company who doesn't have the track record, who isn't reliable, and then a lot of negative publicity comes in the media through different sources, then you see the non-kosherness of the company who dealt with the government and agreed on things. So then the trust from the Suriname companies is lost. So, but if there are traceable companies with a track record, no new ventures without any, we can have new ventures or new startups, but then the trust building will be very difficult. If those are established companies, Staatsolie also works with established companies, then you know that they know the business, you will gain knowledge from them, you can help them move things faster here. It will help. So trust building will take time. What I heard from, for instance, farmers who want to come from Europe to Suriname, for instance, and they think they need land. There is land here, we are net zero, but the government is not doing anything with the request to help and facilitate things, simple things. So some of the things were mentioned this morning. I still have to capture everything and reflect on it, but we have to take the hurdles away, and the government will not be able to do it alone. The government would need to rely more on the private sector.
Absolutely. I think so. You guys are almost the brand ambassadors for the country, because where there's bureaucracy, you guys are straight line. Rounding up, when you look at the future, the next 5 years for Suriname, knowing where it's come from, knowing that you've had huge media upsets in the past with high profile cases regarding your former head of state, knowing that you got high inflation, and knowing also that you're on the verge of having incredible partnerships with potentially India and the global Indian community. Next 5 years, Rekha, do you see it full of challenges or do you see it full of opportunities? And do not say both.
No, it's full of opportunities. I think we have to show more resilience, and we have to believe in ourselves more. And I see a bright future, but it will not come by itself. So we have to work for it. And we're working towards it. So I see the bright future not only coming from the oil and gas sector, because we cannot be heavily dependent on one sector and then kill all the other sectors and then make everything expensive in the country. Expensive. There is energy poverty in Suriname.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that that energy poverty is taken away. We have some countries, US and Europe, who do not support developments in fossil fuel or forestry, or even agriculture, because they say, the emission rate will be high.
Yeah, and it's a whole ESG movement, isn't it?
And then there, I say to them, we also have the right to the same standards of living as those living in US and Europe. And we have to make sure that the poverty and the energy poverty is taken away. So we will continue with oil and gas. We will have to continue with agriculture, forestry, and some other sectors where we will have to create an income on short term. So oil and gas, probably the development will be beyond 27. So from now to 5 years, oil will kick in 27 and later. Agriculture and business process outsourcing services, call centers, tourism. Those are sectors where we can see the earning capacity at a shorter term.
Rekha, it strikes me that you're giving measured responses, but you deeply care about the country. And I know it's going to sound weird. Suriname means something to you, obviously. Do you feel that you mean anything to it, to Suriname?
Suriname means a lot to me, and I will fight and do everything possible to make sure that Suriname gets better. Do I mean something for Suriname? Well, more and more organizations. So using my position, let's go back. I'm Director Staatsolie. Because of my position, people take me seriously, more seriously. So we had maybe another chair of the supervisor of the VSB of a different company, but now there's a company with a track record, very serious company, which means a lot in the society of Suriname, being in the VSB, together with DP World, also a remarkable company. So two strong companies have now a position or representing the business society. What we want to show or do is make some steps forward, and we see that we are being taken serious. probably others also. So do I mean something for Suriname? I don't know, but I will do, together with the VSB board and the different sector chairs, our utmost to make sure that we deliver some stuff that will be feasible within the next 3 years for sure.
What an incredible conversation, I'm sure you agree. A massive thank you to our guest for joining us. I know she's new into her role there at VSB, and Suriname has undergone many challenges since recording of this podcast. In fact, that there was actually a protest outside in the streets that we've never seen anything like that before. Now, Suriname can be a rather frustrating place to do business in, and that is the reality. It's home to an incredible community of global Indians, but what may feel familiar from the outside may be dissimilar for most when it comes to their business practices. So to help guide you through Suriname and the true opportunities within that region, we're going to be dedicating ourselves to do a microsite that goes into detail on who you need to trust, who you need to hear from, and what you need to avoid. It is your essential guide for the global Indian community in the 48 countries in which you listen to this from to find out more. Now, I'd love to hear your comments. If you got comments about business experiences in the country, drop me an email. It's rajan@globalindianseries.com. Now, if you are privileged and lucky enough to be part of our private distribution, you can also ping me a direct message there as well. Until next week, I hope all remains well as we continue our journeys looking at the 50 shades of brown discussions on the brown world around us. Until then, take care for now.
Global Indian Network. Print, TV, events, podcasts. Find out more at globalindianseries.com.